This is someone who is so in love with the world of movies. And I think 20, 30, 40 years from now, he is going to be in that echelon of Spielberg, of Lucas, of Cameron, of these giant names of directors who left their mark, made such distinct films, and made something that when you left that theater, you were like, I just watched my favorite movie of all time. Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of Babylon. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts today, and joining alongside me are my fellow stars of the silver screen. It's Anthony.
Hello.
And Shahbaz.
Hello.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Now, I got to ask both of you. First, I want to ask you both, how are you doing? Shay, I'm going to start with you.
I'm doing great. I had a really bad allergic reaction this morning, so the inside of my chest is flaming. But I'm
Okay.
gonna power through this. I'm gonna do this the best review that I possibly can because allergies and bullets can't even stop me. I'm gonna do my
Got
best.
you. Now, I was going to ask you, you had an allergic reaction. Were you reacting to something, or were you just reacting to waking up? And
I think I saw a picture of you, and that was enough. That's what set me off.
I think that's all it takes sometimes. I think that's all it takes. Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I think as of today we're watching the World Cup and England just lost, so sorry English fans or English audience who do listen to our show. It's a tough break, but there's always 4 more years from now and you'll be able to,
or 2 more years for Euro. Portugal did get knocked out today too, so
very true.
It is a sad day in the football world for European football. But hey, the best
France,
teams move forward.
France is still.
We know, but do we count
The
France? Of course we count France. Of course we do. No, we are winding down for the year. It's wild to think that we are approaching our final reviews of the year. This I think is our final official review of the year, because we'll have Avatar that's coming out on the 13th, which is in a couple days for us, but it's out already. The time is weird here on the movie podcast. But then this will be our final movie review of the year. So we did it. We made it. This is our last review of 2022.
No one believed it. No one said it could be done.
No one said it could be done, but we proved them all wrong anyway. This is going to be our review of Babylon. This has been a film we've been looking forward to for a very long time. But before we get to all of that, as always, you can catch a brand new episode of the movie podcast every single Monday, and watch out throughout the week for our reviews and interviews on all the latest movies and series. If you want to follow the show, check us out on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd at the movie podcast. Make sure you write into the show at hello@themoviepodcast.ca and join our Discord. We're having some great conversations in there. We are in full holiday mode right now. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe. Let us know if you're excited for this film and what you cannot wait for maybe in 2023. We'll have episodes for all of that and more. I can't believe as of the release of this episode, we are basically a week away from Christmas. What are you guys asking Santa for?
World peace. I'm asking for love and kindness. All the things that you can't, wrap under a bow.
Got you. So nothing that Santa could help you with. Very good. Anthony, how about you?
For me, I wish my what I want from Santa is just for the movie podcast to have a successful 2023. That's what I'm asking. That's the
You're already living in 2023, though, aren't you, Anthony? So how is it for us?
There's a couple of more days left in 2023 that we haven't got through. And if those days, yeah, all those days before that were just downhill. But no, not yet.
No, man, no.
But yeah, no. I just want 2023 to be a successful year for us, even bigger and better.
Definitely.
I want to be on, the New York Times.
You want to be on the New York Times? You want to be in Times Square?
Oh, for sure, both. No, I don't want to be
Okay.
arrested on Times Square. Why would I want to be arrested?
No. We'll
Unless
see
you
what
want me
happens.
to get
Well,
arrested.
it's 2023 is so far from now, so who knows what's going to happen? It's another 365 days. We are so grateful and we're so happy for all the success that we've had this year. But we're going to talk all about that and more on our holiday special, our Christmas special, which will be coming out next week. So stay tuned for that. But today is all about Babylon. This film is written and directed by Damien Chazelle, who you will know from films like Whiplash, La La Land, First Man, and now he is back with his most ambitious film ever, and we're going to talk all about it very soon. This film stars a huge cast: Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Diego Calva, Gene Smart, Jovan Adepo, Jun Li, PJ Byrne, Lukas Haas, Olivia Hamilton, Tobey Maguire, Max Minghella. Oh my God, Shay, you say this name perfectly. Could you say it for me? Max
What's
Minghella?
Max Minghella? Yeah,
That's the one. Thank you very much.
yeah.
Rory Scovel, Olivia Wilde, Samara Weaving, and so much more. This is a stacked cast for this film, and it's going to be releasing on December 23rd, and it's going to have a wider release in the new year, overseas and everywhere, so stay tuned for that too if you are one of our listeners outside of North America. And I want to say thank you to our friends at Paramount Pictures Canada for inviting us to watch this film. Shay, I would love for you to tell us what it's all about.
Babylon is an original epic set in 1920s Los Angeles and a tale of outsized ambition and outrageous excess. It traces the rise and fall of multiple characters during an era of unbridled decadence and depravity in early Hollywood.
I love it. This is a film that we did not see much about. We did not hear about this movie for a long time. I think even a couple months ago we were talking like, is this movie still coming out this year? But it is here. It has arrived, and oh my God, we have a lot to talk about. Anthony, I would love for you to start us off with your first reactions to Babylon.
Babylon is my favorite movie of the year. Hands down, it's so good. It's a wild ride from start to finish. From the very first sequence, we all looked at each other and said, "What did we get ourselves into?" And it was one of those sequences where you're either in it or not. And I think a lot of people will be in it. It is Damien's unapologetic love letter to Hollywood. It is a love letter, it is a hate letter, but it's Damien Unleashed. I know that sounds like a horror film, but it is we haven't seen Damien this way before. We haven't seen him, I guess maybe from Whiplash, but this is the scenarios and the story is so outrageous. It's unexpected, the insanity that he kind of gives us. For a 3 hour and 8 minute film, you are taken to parties, you are experiencing stories that are too crazy to believe, you experience every single emotion from the human body can emote. It's literally like a roller coaster ride. And I know it sounds familiar because we just did our review for Decision to Leave, and I was saying how beautiful that film is. And this is another fantastic film. And I'm so happy that we were able to get these films right at the end of the year. But the general consensus to this film getting into it was crazy. It was his most ambitious film. People loved this, people hated it. It was like this mix mashed of different reviews for it. So I was really curious. I'm like, how am I going to enjoy this film? It's a very long movie, and man, I my eyes were glued to that screen from beginning to end. I did not yawn, and it was an early screening too. A lot of times when we watch these early screenings, there's going to be one yawn for me. I did not yawn. It was funny as hell. This movie is so funny, and I don't know if it's supposed to be that funny, but there are funny scenarios. There are 3 or 4 sequences where me and Shay and Daniel were just laughing. And there's also this beauty of filmmaking that's being captured at the same time, because Damien loves films and you could see it because the sequences that revolve around the making of a medieval silent film in the middle of the Los Angeles desert, or the introduction to audio. There are sequences that really portray those parts, but they're also like really well shot. Damien does a great job of getting the camera angles in there, the snap shots that we're so used to, like the snap jump backs. I don't know, is that what they
Yeah,
call
the
them?
whip pans.
The whip
Damien
pans.
Chazelle is the master of the whip pan. He is in a
So
league of his own in
good.
that realm.
And the beauty of it is because he's probably editing it as he's filming it at the same time. He knows how the sequence is going to work for this film. I'm not familiar with Diego Calva, but he is the eyes for you in this film. You are experiencing this movie as he is experiencing these wild tales that he's going through. And he does such a good job. And we watch him actually transform from being this like naive, you know, busboy, we'll say, who's just works in Hollywood and wanting to be bigger. And then he, getting to a point where he feels that way, but then at what cost? He was fantastic. Brad Pitt, I think he might win another Best Supporting Actor award for his performance as Jack Conrad, who's a silent film superstar. And, he gets thrown into the idea of now there's audio, and is there a place for him in this world? And then Margot Robbie, who's probably his best performance since Wolf of Wall Street. She's fantastic in this film. She is that nobody that becomes somebody that can't, control the fame. And you have all three of these stories happening at the same time, as well as everything else. At the end of it, it is a love letter to Hollywood. It's a hate letter, but it's also a reminder that like Hollywood will suck you dry and spit you out when it's done. And that is the nature of that business. And you can't help but find the beauty in it.
Yeah, I think well said, Anthony. I think beginning to end, this movie is a rush. Babylon is a rush. Damien Chazelle, I think, leaves this all on the screen, and it's an absolutely electric experience. And I think, like you said, Anthony, Hollywood will eat you up and spit you out, and not even have the courtesy to hold the door open for you. Like it is such an industry that will tear your heart out. And yeah, it's incredible to see that. I think this is very much his, like, if you were to say Whiplash, La La Land, and Babylon as a trilogy, it's kind of like Scorsese's crime trilogy, right? With Goodfellas, Casino, and Wolf of Wall Street. We have a film with Babylon where it's like you want it so bad, what are you're going to sell your soul to get it, and that's kind of what Whiplash is. That's what La La Land is to an extent. But it is someone who is just so in love with the industry, even though there's it will break your heart, and it's pretty incredible to see. And also with the length of this movie, this is 2022 has had a lot of long movies, and sometimes it works really well, and sometimes it doesn't. But Babylon is one of those instances that it works really well. It uses its length. You don't feel that length. Shay, jump on in.
Not being able to feel a 3 hour plus film is an achievement on its own. This movie is just bang, bang, bang all the way through. It in the first 30 minutes, really, this film, it's almost feels like a one shot. Obviously, it isn't. There are a lot of one shots that do occur, but the movie is just kind of taking you, it's grabbing you by the hand and pulling you through this crowded room. It's a debaucherous wild ride. It felt like, well, I don't know what the coke budget for this movie was, but clearly it was high because there is so much cocaine in this movie that I was like, what is this movie? Is Babylon a type of cocaine? Like, what is it? Because I felt like I was on it. Like, it was insane. All my senses were kind of going wild. Like, it's one of those movies that we didn't get to watch it in IMAX. And I don't know if this is going to have an IMAX screening, obviously, because of Avatar, kind of being there playing at the same time. But I would love to see this movie in IMAX because it feels like it was made for the biggest screen possible. It feels like it wants to just overload you with as much as it can. And again, a movie that's this long, that's incredible for it to do. Margot Robbie, she's never had a bad performance in my books. Even her small performance or small scene that she had in The Big Short, that stood out to me from that film as well. In this movie, she is so damn good. There's a sequence where she has to cry. There's a sequence that takes place on a soundstage that I just know all three of us were kind of like, what is going on? Like that scene alone, that soundstage scene, anyone who's going to watch this movie is going to know exactly what we're talking about. That scene alone is like a short film, and it could win a best picture or best short film Oscar right there because of how damn engaging it is. It is tension. It is ripping you around itself. Almost felt like an anaconda just literally like gripping me because I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was fantastic editing, fantastic direction, but on top of that, every character in that moment had a purpose. They had a scene. They were going zip, zap, and zoom and through everything. This is a movie I'm not going to forget. This is a movie that I absolutely loved so much. Damien Chazelle, like you mentioned, Daniel, you take La La Land, you take Whiplash, you kind of have your own Cornetto trilogy here that he's kind of
Yeah.
made his jazz trilogy, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, his I want it so bad I will do anything to have it trilogy.
Exactly. And this movie is that. It felt like a culmination. This is a movie that you would expect a director to kind of make much later in their career after they've kind of gathered all that they can. But Damien's still a young guy and he's still pumping out movies like this. I can't wait to see where he goes next in this world.
Damien Chazelle is one of the best working directors right now. Damien Chazelle has made amazing films. Even First Man, which it's a well-made film. It doesn't resonate with me as much as Whiplash did or La La Land, but every time he comes out to make a new film, he is leaving a mark. He is changing, he's evolving. And what you see in Babylon is a director working at the peak of what they're going to give us. And I'm hope, you know what? I hope it's not the peak. I hope he continues to push that envelope, push the genre, push the medium of film forward. This is someone who is so in love with the world of movies. And I think 20, 30, 40 years from now, he is going to be in that echelon of Spielberg, of Lucas, of Cameron, of these giant names of directors who left their mark, made such distinct films, and made something that when you left that theater, you were like, I just watched my favorite movie of all time. And Damien Chazelle has that ability. He's done that for me twice now with Whiplash and La La Land. And Babylon is now up there for me. I cannot wait to watch it again because it has that potential of being on an all-timers list for me. It is unbelievable of what he was able to accomplish. Yes, in a long runtime, when you have a film that is so enjoyable, so electric, so dazzling, you don't feel that length. You are so lost in the world that Damien's created here, and the performances of Brad Pitt, of Margot Robbie, of everyone in this film are absolutely top of their game, and I would love to see them get recognized. Again, we don't care about awards here on the movie podcast, but what they did is special. I think this is Margot Robbie at her best. This is her. I think Margot Robbie's best performance is I, Tanya. Like if I had to put her performance in I, Tanya and Wolf of Wall Street and now Babylon, like they're all in the upper echelon of her best performances. Phenomenal. Brad Pitt's having a great time. I want to see him in more roles like this. He's just so cool and he just fits that world. And you know, we always have that joke that we say that these guys look like they've seen phones before. Like this movie takes place, it starts off in the 20s and it kind of goes through there, but everyone looks of that time, and I think that's what's so cool. Like they feel like they are pulled out of that era of film, and one of the little things that this film does too is that it starts with that classic Paramount logo as well too, and you always know, like whenever you see like the old school logo, the old Sony logo, the old Warner Brothers logo, you're like, oh shit, we're in for a good time. And this movie is that. This movie is a rush beginning to end. Babylon is a movie you will not forget, and you should definitely go watch it.
There's a sequence in the desert where Margot Robbie wrestles a rattlesnake that people who know me, I don't do well with snakes on screen. I'm getting a lot better, obviously, but this whole sequence was so fucking funny. Like I was laughing so hard. I was going back and forth in my chair because of how crazy it was. And look, we're not from the 1920s. Maybe Anthony, I'm not too sure. Anthony, you're not from the 1920s, right? Top of the
Am
morning to
I?
you.
I don't know. We don't know
Who
yet.
knows?
Who
But that
knows?
that whole sequence, I imagine that's what the 20s was because they had no fucking fear. They had no care about what was going to happen. People were dying at the age of 30 probably back then. So like when you're 30, you're old at that point. So man, this movie, and then I haven't even gotten to the part where we talk about Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire has a small stint in this film, but man, is the impression left because
My
this
God.
this movie pivots really hard when he shows up into this really abstract kind of and I don't want to spoil it, but really very Hollywood kind of method in life. And I was so uncomfortable. I'm like, where is this movie going? Why is this happening? And I'm so glad what happened because there are tent poles in this film that completely suck you in. They you remember those moments from this movie, but you'll also remember the experience all the way through because from from start to finish, this is the most wild ride you're gonna go on.
You know, we have to talk about the score. Justin Horowitz, who obviously has worked with Damien on Whiplash, on La La Land, First Man, and now this. I've been humming the theme song from this film. There are some incredible just moments musically in this film, and obviously Damien Chazelle, who is so in love with music, it is no surprise that he would make the score its own character in this film. Absolutely sublime. I would not be surprised to see it win Best Score. It is fantastic. The cinematography, again, reteaming with Linus from La La Land. Uh, there is so much on this movie that is just firing on all cylinders, and I could tell why Damien Chazelle was kind of making this, on his own. We didn't hear anything from this movie. We got a trailer super late for this movie. You will not believe what Babylon is until you watch it, and that's the only way I could say it. You will not believe the experience you're going to have until you buy a ticket. You're sitting in that theater, and you're like, you know what, 3 hours and 8 minutes, you belong to Babylon.
No question, because I don't know the answer to this, but why is it called Babylon? Was it because of this world of the 1920s, which was like this wild era that we kind of assume a certain look and feel of that time period, but it was really like a wild time period behind the scenes? Because it just seems like it's such a unique name, and I always associate Babylon with Babylon, like the actual
The first
biblical place.
city, like,
Yes.
you think about like
Yeah.
where
Is that
civilization started, right?
is that
So
where
I
like the
think
civilization of Hollywood?
I
Yeah,
think
like
that's kind of what
Babylon
it's
is like the
referencing.
gates, the like God's city. You know what I mean? And I think that's how they see Hollywood. It's like that's like that's Babylon. This is like where you go. This is a holiest of places. This is where you make it or break it, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's why we think when we think of movies, we think of Hollywood. We think of the silver screen. Hollywood is that place. Hollywood is the church. It is the temple. It is everything. It is where people go to become gods themselves, right? And I think that's why it's like that's like the kind of the idyllic version of what movies are and what they can be.
Absolutely. That's about that's why I describe it too.
Wow, what a rush this movie was! Like I'm still reeling from it. Like days after watching it, it really is something special. I think Damien Chazelle really is, as we said, I think he really is one of the best directors of his generation. I think years from now we're going to be looking back on him as one of the directors who's made some of the most iconic films of his generation, right? When you
And I
look
think it's
at
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
everything. No,
No,
please.
I was just gonna say it's good to remember that this movie also is very. It's got the same DNA as his previous films, but do remember you're going into a much more mature movie. This is,
Mhm.
if you thought that Damien was this, really young, naive, or like quiet director, you're gonna totally forget about that. Watch this movie because this movie pushes that boundary of being R-rated. There is sex, there's violence, there is just gratuity in all the senses, but everything makes sense. You get why there's a purpose. There's no focus. Like they're not focusing on the absurdity of the sex in the movie. It makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, I get why this is happening because people just didn't give a fuck. They didn't give a shit. Everything was crazy.
It's about the craziness and the excess and just like the over the topness, right? And it's very much and that's why it reminds me, it's very, very reminiscent of The Wolf of Wall Street, right? Where it's like, here is what's going on in this world. We need to talk about how insane and over the top this is, but that's the only way to tell that story. And I think that's a very much the same thing here, but for the world of film. It's very much in that. We've gotten a lot of movies this year as well about movies. We were kind of naming them before we started recording. We have The Fablemans, um, obviously Babylon, X, Pearl, Empire of Light. What was another one? Oh, Nope. Like there's been so many films about the world of movies, and that's some of my favorite movies. So I think that's why this also very, very much resonated with us as well too. Damien Chazelle is also only 37 years old, so that's kind of like, what are you going to be doing for
Young
the
dude.
next 30 years of directing? That's pretty incredible.
And we also just love movies about movies. Like that's like not just about like the filmmaking process, but this is a movie that talks to you about the entire beginning of when film started as a Nickelodeon all the way to now where it's a CGI heavy caper or whatever it is.
Is this like a story that was culminated through many different stories, or is just something that he kind of like thought up all on his own? Because it is shocking. Like this is shocking cinema, and it's to the point where you're like, there's no way they were wilder then than they are now. And if they
Dude,
were,
they were
what does it look
wild
like
in
now?
1926.
Yeah, and we're talking about like one of those houses that you find in the middle of the desert, and there's like a party happening, and I'm telling you, everything is happening in that party, everything, and everyone's
Yeah.
happy, everyone's excited, everyone's living their life. I want to say that Damien is able to introduce music again into this film. He always does, and to give a portion of this movie to jazz again, and to actually showcase the rise of music in films is super awesome to see, because there is a sequence that plays out. There's many sequences that play out with music, but there's also a big sequence where it focuses on the story of musical performance on the screen, especially with sound now being part of films. And I thought it was beautiful. I thought there are really beautiful moments of that, and there's also really tragic moments of that as well.
There's we talked a lot about sound design and sound editing this year as well, especially when we talked about Bones and All very recently. I truly believe that the last film that I got that used sound so well was Sound of Metal, back in TIFF of like what 2018, I think it was 2019.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah. So not since then have I seen a movie that's really utilizes so well. Babylon is that next example because there are so many moments where I legit felt the air sucked out of the theater because of how quiet the film went.
Yeah.
It went pin drop silent because that's what they needed to show, especially during that soundstage scene. You could hear people's hair just moving on their arms, like it was
Oh
to
God.
that level. It was
It's
so
true.
next level. Like, it was just the best sound editing that I had seen, and I was like, my God, like I can hear him suck the air out of the room, and then I can hear him bring the music back in. You'll hear the jazz come back in, or you hear a footstep come back in, the door creak. There's just such a love and attention to detail that Damien does, and we know that he's going to do it.
Let's get to our final recommendations. Anthony, I would love for you to start us off for the last time in 2022. Let's get our final reactions.
This is a real gem. I took another one from the bag. I'm gonna give it to Babylon because it deserves it. It really does. This is a movie like no other. You will love this film. Truthfully, you will sit down for 3 hours and laugh and cry and go through a tornado of Hollywood at that time. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this film, and I think it's a definite definite candidate for best picture and best director and best supporting actor and actress and sound design and editing and pretty much everything. This is a shoe-in for one of those big 10 um, nominations. So again, this is fantastic. I wish it was coming out sooner. It's coming out it's coming out right before Christmas. So it's a weird time to go. And I feel like I don't know if people will be able to get that time to go watch it, but you need to watch this film. This is a real gem. Go watch it. Enjoy the music. Download the soundtrack now so you can get used to it.
We're definitely going to be talking more about this film. I know in the weeks to come, especially with marketing and box office performance and everything like that. So we will talk about all of that very, very soon on the movie podcast. I'm going to jump in next. It's a real gem. This movie is Babylon is an absolute rush. And I think when we look at what Damien Chazelle has pulled off in his career in the last less than 10 years, we see why he's one of the greatest directors of his generation. He leaves everything on screen in Babylon, from the cinematography, the performance, the music, everything is exceptional. It's a real gem. Go watch it. It's a wild time. It's a crazy time. And this is the type of movie that you go to the theaters and you just get lost in what you're watching. Real gem. Shahbaz.
I had so much fun watching this movie. This was such an experience. This was such a ride. Um, I think even though we don't do awards on this show, I think we should have like a movie podcast awards, in January or sometime where we have categories that aren't your typical categories, and I'd love to nominate films and give awards out.
Very
Just-
specific categories.
Yeah, just between us, kind of. And maybe we can have like
Yeah.
people like a fans vote as well. We should definitely look into that because
100%.
this movie I'm sure is going to get a lot of whatever weird categories that we can throw out there. But about Babylon itself, it's a real gem. Like there's nothing else to say about it other than that this movie is another flag in Damien Chazelle's line of work. This is a culmination of everything he's ever done, and he's perfected it. He can literally just take the next couple of years off, which I hope he doesn't, and sit back and just kind of watch Babylon blow up even further into people's lists. There's going to be a lot of controversy with this movie because I think this movie incites that, but I think that is again the point of this movie. So real gem, watch it. You're not going to regret it. Don't take
Damien
the family
Chazelle, I
though.
think, I think he definitely got his hands dirty with this movie, and you definitely saw, the dark places that he could go to in Whiplash, and he's like, you know what? Let's take it further. I was thinking, Shay, about these categories for these movies, and I was thinking, like, are we going to have a category like, best fight with a snake in a desert? So it's like specific to
We could.
to
We totally
Babylon?
could.
We could, right? 100%.
We could make them
we could have those.
like not just like best film or like best movie that made me cry or just best movie that had me on the edge of my seat. Just something like that, something fun.
Yeah.
We'll brainstorm this. We're talking out loud here, but hey, if you're listening to this episode and you have an idea that you want to kind of throw out there, That'd be great. Join our Discord and let us know what categories you think we should kind of have.
Definitely, yeah. Join our Discord, follow and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, right into the show at hello@themoviepodcast.ca. There is so much going on right now. We have our Avatar review out. We have our Avatar interviews out. Yes, we did some interviews for Avatar, so go check that all out. We have a few more episodes coming for the year, and we will have our Christmas special coming very soon, where we're going to kind of recap everything that's gone on this year. There's been a lot happening. It's been a banner year for us here on the Movie Podcast, but if this is the last time you hear of us this year, if you just like, you know what? I'm only here for the reviews. I don't want anything else. Thank you so much for listening this year. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you and your family. Thank you for listening to our review of Babylon. Thank you to Paramount Canada for inviting us to watch this film. We are not going to forget it. It's a real gem. We absolutely loved it. And of course, as always, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd at The Movie Podcast. Wow. What a year it's been. What a film this was. That was This Time with The Movie Podcast. And we'll see you next.